Hello, my name is Adrian Anderson, and I've been working with Oracle CPQ for around 10 years now. I currently work at Oracle supporting the product, being a product specialist, but this content is separate from my work at Oracle. It's just an effort to get content out there for free for people who work with the product or just generally curious. So, in this video, we are going to talk about the Q in CPQ, the last letter. The Q stands for quoting, and it revolves around your commerce process. So, commerce and quoting for this purposes are going to be synonymous, really going to mean the same thing. And you won't hear me say quoting too often. You'll hear me say commerce more than quoting. Instead of saying quoting process, I'm going to say commerce process. But again, same thing for this video. So, in older days of the application, when you bought CPQ, you got a ref app, reference application. And that came with a bunch of stuff just out of the box for you. You could delete whatever you wanted, you could edit whatever you wanted. It was just something to get you started. Nowadays, you get what's called the standard commerce process. Standard process. And when you create a new commerce process, if I go here and click add, it's going to default to the standard process for the process type. This is an effort to standardize what a commerce process consists of. Because generally speaking, the selling process for all companies is more or less the same. You create a transaction, you add products to that transaction, you do some negotiated pricing, you maybe will request for some approval or you need to get approval based on whatever criteria your business has, and that's where business start to differentiate themselves. Say you get approval from your manager, your boss, or whoever, or maybe you don't even need it. You will send this proposal, this quote, out to a customer for their acceptance of some sort, whether it be verbal or digital or an actual signature, a wet signature. Maybe you don't even need to do that. But then after you get past those steps, you need to fulfill it somehow. Either you integrate to a downstream fulfillment system like Oracle Fusion Order Management or something else. Um, and then you go from there. The deal is won. So it's generally that process. And you generally have the same attributes. You know, you have attribute for the quote name, the customer name, etc. So the standard process does its best to give you most of that stuff up front, so it can save you some time in implementing your this application into your business. So let's start from scratch. I already have a commerce process here that I'm working on. I've done a lot to it. I've made it how I want it. But let's start from scratch and see what a fresh one looks like. So if you don't know, we are in our just administrative screen. We're going to go to process definition to define the process. We already have one here. We're going to add a new one. Let's just call it new coding process. It's going to be a standard process, so we can keep our page length just at 30. This is for the transaction manager, not super important right now. We don't want to autofill anything because we don't have any integrations. We can have our fiscal year here. Let's just keep it at 1/1. Totally fine. If we were going to do um, some sort of integration, we needed a secure attribute, we could upload it here, but we won't need it. And then we have some transaction editing modes, which is quite nice. We can have a single user, one person in a transaction at a time. We can do transaction locking, which allows a user to lock a transaction so no one else can touch it. People can go in and look around, but no one can change anything. Or we can have collaborative editing. Think of this as like a shared Google Sheet. You know, multiple people can be in the same transaction at once doing different things. Not going to fool with this stuff now. We're just going to keep it a single user. I'll click add. It's creating, so we need to wait a little bit. Okay, so we have our new commerce process created. Now, I haven't deployed it, which is why you don't see a last deployed here. If you aren't familiar with CPQ, deployment essentially means whenever you make any changes to, in this case, a commerce process, anything, change a layout, create a new attribute, remove a new attribute, change a rule, change the name of an attribute, anything like that, you have to deploy it. So your administrative changes take effect on the buy side or the end user side. So I haven't deployed this yet. So if I still want it, I can still delete it. But I'm not going to do that, of course. Let's just look at what we get with the standard commerce process. So we will go, most of the things we care about are going to be in this documents navigation. So let's go here. We have our main document, our subdocument, of course. Let's look at the attributes we get in the main document. So we get a bunch, about 230 plus whatever in these sets here. So it is a lot here. Most of the things you are going to already need. I won't go through this list. I will allow you to go through them yourselves. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, let's go to the help documentation. It should give you a list. Yeah, it does. It gives you a list of attributes already. So I'll be sure to post this um, in the show notes or in the description of the video. Okay. Same thing for transaction line. You get a bunch of stuff here. Great. All of these things there's already a layout here for you that you can start with. See, that's what it looks like. At least from this view, I'll be sure to show you on the buy side when we deploy it. Same thing for the sub document. Not too many things here, but enough. Enough. They're here for you. There's already some rules. Let's look at the rules at the transaction level. And notice I can't change any of this stuff. None of these rules I can modify. I can inactivate them if I want to, but I can't change any of the conditions or the components. Same thing if I go back to the attributes. I can't delete any of them. I can change the title if I wanted to. I can edit some things here. I can override the standard default. I'd have to click this and then click apply. Then I can start to change it, but I'm not going to change anything right now. Again, there's also actions here. I can't delete anything, but I can modify some things. If I need to change anything here, I have to override them. Same thing with the destination tab. I have to override them. And this theme you're seeing of, what I can and what I can't do, it means to enforce keeping a certain level uh, of integrity to the commerce process, keeping certain actions there, keeping certain uh, things about these actions or attributes or rules there. Yeah, sure, you can override some things, which is neat, but it's better to have you override something than completely change it. Because worst case scenario, if you need to revert something you've done, you can just undo the override and it goes back to factory settings, let's call it. There's also actions and rules on the transaction line. Those are the same. The transaction level has library functions here. And I don't think you can delete any of these. Let's try. And you can't, which is neat. Let's click on one. You can only view it in read-only mode, which is what it is. There's no way to override these. It's one thing I've noticed. Maybe they'll come out with a way to override these BML library functions. But if I were to go to the libraries here, these BML libraries, I can override these. So again, this is outside the commerce process. Probably not. It's not on topic for this subject, but elsewhere you can override these libraries, these util functions. You can copy them. If I go back to where we were, should mention that. You can copy them and then reference the new version if you want. So that's something. So let's go back. The commerce process comes with a predefined flow, start or steps, as we would call it. Has a start step, in progress, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This has participant profiles already. They have forwarding. I don't think they have forwarding rules, but they have transition rules already. All that stuff is already there. Okay. Let's see if there's any formulas here. No formulas. Good if you ask me. No analytics, I think. Yep, no analytics. Don't really use shopping cart too much. I've never used it, but it's not enabled by default, which is good, I guess. Any integrations? Some integrations. These look like these are Salesforce integrations. So that's good. You still have to configure these how you want it. Let's see if there are any XSL views. No XSL views. Any RTE templates, rich text editor templates. There's one for a cover letter, which is, or at least a folder, but I don't think there's anything in it. So really nothing here. Any printer friendly views? There's one. Let's see what's in Process Manager. Some columns and the Process Manager, aka the Transaction Manager. If you don't know what that is, here's the Process Manager for the commerce process I already have. So these are the columns and they're mapped to different attributes. Let's see if status is mapped to anything. Yep. So there's mapping already done here. Nothing you need to do. It already comes with a number of data columns here. New process actions. Yep. So again, coming to one that's already there. So new transaction, print, email, etc. All that is already there for you. And we already looked at steps. Okay. So let's deploy this. And then let's look at it from the user side. Okay, So our deployment is finished. You'll notice in the top right here, we have two, maybe three more icons. We have a icon that takes us to the commerce process for the new coding process we created, and then one that takes us to the reporting manager. Won't be talking about reporting manager in this video. In fact, won't be talking about how you manage these icons up here, another video. But let's just go to our commerce process here, and it's set up for us. Here are the columns we saw before. They're already mapped. We have some process actions. Let's create a new transaction. We come in. It already has some neat styling for us. There's already fields here. They're already populated how we want to. There's already actions here if we want. Let's see what happens if we save. We save it. There's more actions. Our step has been transitioned. We can add products here if we want. And again, now we're getting into configuration, which is, it's already been a video about that, but let's just add this to the transaction, see what happens. Okay, so there's something that we need to do here. So could not find a valid invocation rule, process invocation rule. So let's fix that, okay? So we have been talking about the process itself, but there's also process invocation. Fancy word here. It really just means how to start a process, how to invoke it. So let's come here, and to resolve the issue we want to resolve, we need to come to model configuration. But these pages are different places in the application where you can start a commerce process. You can start a commerce process by a part search result, by a part display, by a part association. You can do it from a model configuration. You can do it from recommendation items. You can start a commerce process from the favorites list, etc. I personally have not used most of these. I have used model configuration, favorites list, and I want to say part search display. But these two are definitely the main ones you're going to start a process from. But let's get down to business, model configuration. We already have one at the transaction. If you remember, let's try this again. Oh, another thing that's already mentioned, there's already a way to, it already gives you um, a naming convention for your transaction, which is neat. But if you remember, this is the action we're trying to click. This is a process invocation action. At the transaction, at the transaction. So there's one already here. Our question is, why isn't it working? So we can click on it. It doesn't really tell us too much here, but we need to go to rules, click list. And here are the invocation rules. Same rule at the transaction, but this one is targeted towards the standard commerce product. This is the one I already had. So to show you, this is the one I already had. We need to create an invocation rule for this new commerce process. Okay, so let's do that. We will add. We'll call it add to transaction, always true. And we need to give it a targeted process, which is going to be this new quoting process. Let's add this, update. Now we have two, no problem. Apply, back. We'll go back, and we'll need to deploy this. So model configuration, deploy. And we're all good. So now we can come right back to our configuration. We should just be able to click add the transaction, and it's all resolved. So that's a very low level thing that you need to do. Really easy thing to do. And because configuration and pricing, both of which I've made videos about already, are agnostic to commerce, we already have our items here with their prices. Let's save it. The commerce process itself already gives us a line item grid with columns that are relevant, list price, net price, discounting. It does this math for us already. It gives us our totals. It gives us all this nice math for us already. We don't need to do any of this. We can request approval. It already has steps for us that we can cycle through. Actions to create an order if we were integrated already. Request date already. A bunch of stuff. I think I've gone too far here. But it gives you this level of integrity, this framework, this, how do I say, um, it raises the floor for you. It saves you work, basically. You don't need to create all this stuff from scratch. You don't need to figure out what attributes you need to do the basic job. You don't have to figure out the rules you need. You don't have to figure out the BML to do the math you want. A lot of that stuff is already done for you. The only thing you need to do is take this and extend it to tailor it to your business to get it how you want it. Maybe you don't want um, net amount here. Maybe you don't want price score here. Maybe you want them in different orders. Maybe there are attributes here that you are missing that you can create. Maybe you want to change the name or rearrange these things. One thing I often do is I put this request date and transaction details. In fact, let's compare commerce processes. Let's try that. I create a new transaction, and let's just start from scratch for both of them, actually. On the left, we have the new commerce process that we just created, haven't done anything to. And on the right, we have the commerce process that I've created a while ago and I've tailored it to my liking. Now, this one, I can just go ahead and click save. And it saves, it moves a step. For mine, when I click save, but I have things like, oh, here we go. So it's giving me some errors. Customer company name is required. I need to put something here. I'm just going to put Barnum and Bailey, the circus. It says transaction type is required. I need to give it a transaction type. Again, these aren't things that are over here. Let's save. I have integrations running on this. So I'm getting these account number, these IDs from an external source from Fusion. Here's request date. I have ABO enabled in this commerce process. So I need to give it a request date. I need to give it some requested periods. Okay. Let's again add products. Mine by default is I'm expanding my items. I'm also not showing any option classes in mine. This has option classes. See, I like to hide mine. That's what that's for. And I have a rule and an attribute to handle that for me. I have different fields on mine. I have service duration fields here. Mine are in different order. I have some date specific fields, request date, etc. Fulfillment status. I don't have anything for contract value here. I've hidden them. Now, I've hidden them for my personal view, which is another thing you can do. You have personalizations here. So if I remove my personalizations, which I'm going to regret, I have all these fields here and they're different order. Here I haven't set any personalizations. There's nothing to remove. I have different actions here. Charge details, add covered products, these are standard options here. So you can take these quite a long way, but notice I didn't really do that much. This page is still the same. This page is still the same. I added a new tab here for documents, but it's really just a tab in one attribute. This page is relatively the same. I added a new action here. Another tab and another tab. So all in all, I haven't done that much from where this starts you and where you go. Let's see if I can add it up. I've added 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 attributes to this first tab, 2 of which were just for demonstration in the last video I did. One, 2 actions I've added to the layout. I've changed the name or label of one attribute. Let's just be pessimistic. Say I've added a dozen transaction line attributes here. Now I have done a lot in the sub document. I have done a lot in the sub document, admittedly. But given starting from scratch and taking something that's mostly done for you, let's say pessimistically 70% done, it's a light work. And I'm just one person and I tinker with this in my spare time. And it didn't take me that long, maybe a few hours. Now, I work with this product as a profession, so it's easy for me to do it. But it's still better, again, than starting from scratch. So that is the standard commerce process, or that's the quoting process that that we have nowadays. It's really just your quoting flow. How do you get from starting a sale to finishing a sale? Before we finish, there is one thing that we ought to mention, which is the approval, how approvals work in CPQ. So I'm going to come to transaction, I'm going to come to actions, and I'm going to look for the submit action. You can create different, these are the type of action. You can create more than one submit action, depending on your use case. But when you come into this action, you want to come to this edit approvals. Now, CPQ natively has its own approval mechanism, but you can use remote approvals. I have never used that before. So if we just have the CPQ approvals, we're coming to edit approvals. This is going to give you your approval sequence, and it's twofold. You have your reasons for requesting approval, and then you have who your approvals are going to be. And that's important to make a distinction, because the reason you're going to ask for approval may underneath it have logic to who you should request approval for. So you may request approval for um, a 30% discount, but based on what region you're selling to, or who your manager is, or what department you're in, etc., the person that gets their request may be different. So there are a lot of things you can do in here that we won't talk about in this video. That's more advanced, but just know that approvals is where businesses find a lot of their uniquenesses. And this is a tool to help you put those approvals into technology, but you have to first define it on paper first. CPQ won't do this for you. You have to figure out what are your reasons for approval and then the logic to determine who is going to approve or not. You get something simple out of the box, which is great. It really is as simple as close this. If this box is checked, send approval email to, let's see, and we can see here, here's a condition. If required approval is checked, if it's true, it's going to send the email to the super user here. Okay, so that should be everything. Commerce would also include the document designer. We can take a quick look at a document here. Actually, let me go back, leave page. This is for the commerce process I already have. Here's for the new one. You don't get anything out of the box, unfortunately. You have to start from scratch here. You have a test document. And this is what this will look like. So I can give you a preview. We need to get the BSID. We go to preview. There's our document. Nothing on this first page. Stuff on the second page. Yeah, pretty simple. So because I'm going to do this anyway, I will show you. I'm going to delete this commerce process because I don't need it anymore. I'm never going to use this. So how do you do that? If you need to do this, do not do this if you're in a production site. There's no way to recover this. Don't delete your commerce process, then try to open an SR asking for it to be recovered. I don't think it's possible. So be very careful here. But I'm going to do it anyway because I don't need it. So new quoting process is the one I am not using. I'm going to go to the deployment center for this commerce process. I'm going to delete this process. Yes, so recovery of this process or any of its data will not be possible. Make sure this is what you really want. Yes. There's other things you can do here. You can repopulate data columns. Don't really do that. You can do a mass update of transactions, which is neat. So if you need to update all transactions, you can click this to find some BML for it. We're not going to do that today. We're going to delete, yes, all process. We're going to add this event. and it's in process now. Now it's done. And we're back to the one commerce process, and we're back to those just two icons up here. So that's the Q in CPQ quoting. It's really just your process, your flow of how you make a sale, or how you do your selling. Outside of the pricing and the configuration, it's just the flow. Create a transaction, edit products, do some negotiation, request approval from the customer and or your manager, um, generate a document, submit it to fulfillment. Pretty much it. Hope this was helpful. If it was, please like, share, comment the video, share it on your LinkedIn. Um, please pass it on to people that you may think will benefit from it. If you have any questions, please leave those in the comments. I'll do my best to monitor the comments. And thank you very much. I'll see you in the next video.